Counselor Garrett,
Here.
Counselor Gordon,
Here.
Counselor Healy,
Here.
Counselor Minhas. Oh, he's connecting.
There's a couple Counselor Meanhouses in here.
Oh yeah, we have two. We got three.
No, there's two.
We multiply.
We'll see if we can.
Says he's connecting to audio, so he's not on audio yet.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Counselor Minhas, can you hear us? Are you able to unmute him on there?
Ask to unmute. I can make him a
Is
host.
that a red line through his microphone?
Yeah.
Yes. It's not. It's not.
Yep.
There's an unmute all button.
Okay. I think the deal is with remote meetings, I can't mark him as present if I can't get a confirmation. So,
Right.
Okay.
Counselor, if you get off mute somehow, just chime in and let us know you're here. And I'm just gonna make note that we also have Counselor Ricketts. Thank you for joining us. No. I'm gonna make note we have a planning board member too. Okay. The first order of business is to approve the minutes from the December 12th, 2023 EDC meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. I need a second.
Second.
Thanks. And
We have to do a roll call.
oh, we do have to do a roll call vote.
Yep.
Counselor Garrett,
Aye.
Counselor Gordon,
Yes.
Counselor Healy,
Yes.
Counselor Minas, do we have you yet? No microphone. I don't think we do.
He just joined again.
Oh, okay. Chime in if we have you.
You vote?
I can, but we're good. I'll vote yes as well, but we're okay with quorum. So I am gonna have public comment, but I want to, just make note that we have public hearings, so I would ask if you're here for public comment that relates to the public hearings, do your comments in the public hearing, if that makes sense. But if someone is here for public comment and something unrelated to the public hearing, you are welcome to give comment then. Or now, I'll say. So if anyone is here for general public comment, not related to the 6 public hearings that we have tonight. Counselor Minas, can you come off mute? Is it working yet?
It is working now. Sorry,
Oh,
it just
great.
kept bouncing me off. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I'm gonna mark you as present. Is there anyone online who's here for public comment, not related to the 6 public hearings tonight? Okay, great. No one's raising their hand or anything in there?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you see the chat on there?
Chats. More chats.
Okay.
Hello. Erica McGee says.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. And so I should keep an eye, see if people want to
Yeah,
join.
because when we get to the public hearing, I'll ask people to
Okay.
put their names in there as
And I'll
well.
look at that point.
Which will be now.
I'll look.
So what I'm gonna do is open the public hearings. I have to read all 6 of these documents related to the public hearings, and then I will open it for comment. So I'm opening this public hearing at 6:07 p.m. and I'm gonna read all of them at once. And then if people are here to speak, you can speak to any of them as the hearing's open. So this one is FY 24-070. The city council moved that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance article. Is that 12? I'm not good. 7. Good at my Roman numerals, sorry.
Yeah, I was.
Special regulations, chapter 200, zoning, section 50, major development review, section B, application, paragraph 1, by deleting 3,000 and replacing it with 2,000 as follows. All new uses as defined by the Greenfield zoning ordinance that generate 2,000 vehicle trips per day or more in the general commercial district and or 1,500 vehicle trips per day in any other district, subsection B1 amended by the City Council on March 20th, 2019, and further amends the table of contents and index of that code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the code of the city of Greenfield. And then the next one is order number FY 24-069.1. The city council moved that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200, zoning section 3, terms and words by adding the following language in bold to the definition of farm poultry. Farm poultry, premises used in the production of poultry and or eggs having more than 10 poultry. Premises on parcels of land less than 5 acres are allowed to have up to 10 poultry, not including roosters, and further amends the table of contents and index of the code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the code of the city of Greenfield. FY 24-069.2, the city council moved that it be ordered that the city of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200, zoning section 3, terms and words by striking the following language in strike through and replacing with the following language in bold to the definition of dwelling 3-family. Dwelling 3-family, a detached building containing 3 dwelling units. Strike where each of the 3 units or any portion thereof must be above or below at least one of the other units, also referred to as a triplex. And further amends the table of contents and index of the code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the code of the city of Greenfield. FY 24-069.3, the city council moved that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200, zoning section 55, marijuana establishments, subsection B, applicability, paragraph 4, by deleting the following language and strike through. No more than 8 marijuana retailers and strike through, and no more than 4 marijuana delivery operators shall be allowed within the city of Greenfield. The number of licenses for brick and mortar marijuana retailers shall be capped at 8. A marijuana outdoor cultivation is limited to tier 1, 5,000 square feet per license. No person or entity having direct or indirect control shall be granted or hold more than 3 licenses in a particular class. The maximum outdoor canopy permissible under all licenses for a single parcel is 15,000 square feet, and further amends the table of contents and index of the code. Was that for us, Penny? It was someone in the waiting room. Non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the code of the city of Greenfield. FY 24-069.4A, the city council moved that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200, zoning section 3-4, sign regulations, subsection F, general sign regulations, paragraph 5, by adding the following language in bold. Dynamic display signs, also known as electronic message centers, shall be prohibited with the exception of municipal uses. Dynamic display signs, also known as electronic message centers, means any sign designed for outdoor use that is capable of displaying an electronic signal, including but not limited to cathode ray tubes, CRT, light emitting diode, LED displays, plasma displays, liquid crystal displays, and other technologies used in commercial available commercially available televisions or computer monitors, signs with the technology which are placed by a public agency for the purpose of directing or regulating pedestrian or vehicle movement are exempt from this chapter, and further amends the table of contents and index of the code. And further, that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the code of the city of Greenfield. Okay, really, there's one more here. FY 24-069.4B. The city council move that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200 zoning, section 34, sign regulation, subsection I, exception paragraph 3 by striking the following language in strike through. No sign other than traffic control and route signs authorized by public agencies shall be placed within a public right of way unless a special permit has been granted by the zoning board of appeals with prior written approval from strike the Greenfield Licensing Commission and the Greenfield Department of Public Works for city county rights of way and the Massachusetts Department of Public Works for state right of way. And further amends the table of contents and index of the code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the code of the city of Greenfield. Oh wait, did I lie? Is there one more? Oh my God, I'm sorry. FY 24-069.5. The city council moved that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200, zoning section 21, water supply protection district, WP, subsection, a purpose, paragraph 1 by deleting language and strike through and adding language in bold. The general boundaries of the water supply protection district include zones strike 1 for I and strike 2 for 2 and strike 3 for 3. We're replacing numbers with Roman numerals. As shown on the official zoning map dated July 28th, 2014, and as amended, the water supply protection district includes the Millbrook Wellfield and the recharge and watershed areas as determined by the hydrologic study titled Aquifer Land Acquisition Study, prepared for the City of Greenfield Department of Public Works by Tig & Bond Incorporated of East Hampton, Mass, August 1988. The district also includes the Leary Well Site Zone 1 and the 1/2 mile interim zone 2 required by the Department of Environmental Protection. DEP, the district also includes the Cason Well Site Zone 1 or strike through 1 for 1 and zone 2, strike through 2 for 2. Recharge area, the maps as well as the accompanying report are incorporated herein by reference and are on file with the city clerk, inspector of buildings, and planning board. And further amend section 200-21 Water Supply Protection District WP of the zoning ordinance by replacing numbers 1, 2, and 3 relative to zones with Roman numerals 1, 2, and 3 throughout the ordinance. And further amend the table of contents and index of the code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format in the code for the city of Greenfield. Okay. Do I need to read the explanation of supporting rationale? Somebody who's chaired a committee. Okay, so we've made it through all of those ordinances. And if anyone is here to speak on any of those proposed zoning changes, sorry, I said ordinances, not on ANA one. You can speak now.
We have one in the chat.
We have one in the chat.
Stephanie Duclos.
Okay, and we're gonna give 2 minutes per person.
2 or 3.
I think, didn't they put 2 on here? Hold on. Oh, no, they didn't. It was another agenda they put a time limit on. So I'll do 3 minutes per person. Okay.
Yeah. You don't want to sign up, right? You're all.
I'm gonna have you sign up when you come up, but I think if you guys just want to come one at a time, whoever wants to go first. Okay.
Okay. Greetings, ready?
Yes.
Okay. Greetings to the Greenfield Economic Development Committee. I'm Jo Marie Jackson, Highland Avenue. I'm here to speak on the lowering the MDR trips number. As earlier this month, on March 7th, citizens of Greenfield had the opportunity to attend, either physically or virtually, the Greenfield Planning Board meeting regarding a site plan review for a business prospectively planning to locate in Greenfield. With its ingress and egress positioned directly across from an ingress egress of another restaurant. Both businesses and other large businesses eastbound and westbound, which ultimately feed from a thoroughfare called Mohawk Trail, which is a state road. A traffic study attachment by Kimley Horn was emailed the morning of that meeting, March 7th, to the director of the Department of Planning and Development, leaving little time to study the information. Later the evening of March 7th, the site plan consultants for the business entity could only offer a fairly inaudible presentation of the attached 18-page traffic study, which offered vehicle pass-by rates by land use data surveys spanning from years 1992 to 1996, attempting to inform the public that using the methodology of data and models published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, ITE, in their Trip Generation Manual, 11th edition. We, the citizens of Greenfield, sincerely express our concerns about maintaining our quality of life in Greenfield. As we are told, the vehicle pass-by rate by land use data surveys can be data collected for 30 years. Well, if we consider the earliest year of that study, 1992, as it is now 2024, that makes it 32 years. We as citizens of Greenfield have learned a thing or two. These traffic studies can be flawed, layered, and sound impressive with the ITE generic readings from locations such as Kentucky, Florida, and Indiana. By this, the city of Greenfield in the beautiful Pioneer Valley, and we care about what impacts our neighbors and the businesses and our quality of life. I am recommending to the Economic Development Committee to approve the number 1,000 car trips as the threshold for a major development review. Thank you.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Pamela Goodwin. I live at 54 High Street. I tried to listen in by Zoom, traveling back from the State House at the meeting that the previous speaker was talking about. It was a little chaotic because the person who was to do the traffic study part of the component couldn't unmute. It was, like she said, pretty inaudible. So I noticed that the paper the next day or so said that it was continued until April. And I am also in favor of at least lowering it down to 1,000 for the MBR. I'm going to make a statement on behalf of my son who has to leave Buckland and drive in here every morning to go to work. His wife has to she has to attend to surgical patients at the hospital every time. And I feel like I want businesses to come, absolutely, but we really need to see what the impact would be. My son said to me, Mom, I can just picture waiting backed up, to try to get into the city to get to his job. We all know that people are going to travel 91 and they're going to say, where's the closest coffee? And they're going to say, ooh, Starbucks right here. So all the skiers, all the people traveling on 91 are also going to be bringing in money, which is a good thing. We definitely need money in the town and businesses. But I want to caution people about the total impact. And I don't even know the difference. When it started off at 500, then it went to 1,000, then it jumped to 3,000. Now it's 2,000. I'm totally confused by that. But I will say that for my personal experience, in a previous small town, a state highway was the major way for commuters to get into Framingham, Natick, Boston. And they would all go through there. And the state had to rip up the highway, but they didn't make a turning lane for the Dunkin' Donuts. And the selectmen in that small town said they will never allow another, and it's a very tiny town. It wasn't even the center of the town. It's just a main corridor for everybody driving to get east. So people would slam their brakes on. I had to take a right quick signal that, take a quick left signal. I nearly got rear-ended several times. I used to call up the police and say, do you ever monitor this thing? Because it's take a right, take a left immediately, and they're in a big hurry to get somewhere. And then I would find out many of them would slam their brakes on and go through the drive-through at Dunkin'. They didn't actually make a turning lane and people lost their property. So I can't even figure out why they couldn't manage to do that, but they did have to rip up everything, redo that whole intersection. So I just want to caution everybody to think deeply about it. I hope we get it. I hope we can figure out a way that it's going to be amenable to the community as bringing in businesses, and also take a look at the impact on how many cars are going to turn in there and what the time frame is going to be. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mitch Spade, Highland Avenue. Greetings. Greetings, Economic Development Committee. I would like to recommend that the Economic Development Committee vote to reset the number of daily trips for an MDR, known as Major Development Review, for 1,000 car trips. As per Planning Board Chair on March 9th, he recommended also to consider 1,000 trips as a threshold. I don't think this will deter any businesses or entities from coming into Greenfield. I think what it will do is make them think twice about being committed to Greenfield. And again, we recommend that you consider the 1,000 threshold versus the 3,000. Thank you.
We can take, was there online comment for the hearing? Is there anyone in that chat?
Just Stephanie.
Stephanie, if you are good to go.
Yep. So Stephanie Duclos, Greenfield, Chapman Street. I definitely support a lowering of the number of the MDR. I think it's imperative that we look at total impact on a community when it comes to traffic. I know I definitely have seen an increase in traffic on Chapman Street. People trying to save time to cut across town. So, the numbers, if a major development wants to come in, like a Starbucks, I mean, we really need to take into consideration the total impact of all the numbers of all the businesses in all the same areas on how that will impact our downtown traffic and our bypass streets. Also had a couple comments on the amendment to the section 200-55 marijuana establishments. I don't understand the need. I see the rationale because I printed out the agenda, and I don't still find the need to remove the limits on the delivery operators. I think it should be more in a written policy that we encourage offering those licenses to do so based on the DEI act relative to equity in the cannabis industry. Also would like to speak to the zoning amendment 4200-34. I think that we should leave the oversight of the Greenfield Licensing Commission. I think that there may be other parts within the zoning ordinance that gives the licensing commission certain powers, and I don't want to undermine another section of the zoning ordinance. I just wanted to make another comment about when we do a zoning map update, if we could see the difference between the maps that were and the maps that are included in the packet, just for reference so that the public can understand, you know, are we getting more areas that are designated as water protection areas? Are we getting less areas that are protected? I would have liked to been able to see the difference contained within the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Anybody else for public comment?
Yeah, do you have anybody else on there?
Oh, Sandy, we cannot take comment in the chat box, but if you do want to speak, you can give your public comment now. If you can't, if you're not able to speak, you can also email your public comment or drop them off to the clerk and they'll send them to the entire council if you want. Anyone else online?
Nobody else in the chat.
No one else in the chat. Okay,
There's nobody.
it's all you
I know
all.
that Erica McGee might want to comment, but she may not be.
He's in there, but
Is in there?
yeah.
As one to comment?
No, as a guest, but
Okay.
he hasn't commented.
All right. And Al Collins is also here. I thought he might want to comment.
He did send comment
He
today.
said some, okay, great.
Erica did as well.
So, members of the EDC committee, my name is Al Norman. I'm on Grinnell Street in Greenfield. I sent you all a document. I hope you all had a chance to read it. Yes, you saw it? I wanted to dispel a few myths about this thing called MDR. Most people in Greenfield have no idea what an MDR is and how it's different than a site plan review. I've studied this more than I want to admit, but basically, in the 30 years that I've watched the MDR in progress in Greenfield, I cannot recall a single incident where an MDR stopped the project. This is not an ordinance that stops anything. It's an ordinance, if you look at the actual language in the purpose section of the rules and regulations, you won't find this, it's not in the zoning, it's in the rules and regulations for the planning board. The purpose is to review projects that have the potential for impact to the environment, abutting properties, town services, traffic patterns, or the public health and safety for the purpose of mitigation. Very important, for the purpose of mitigation. That's good language, because what that is saying there is that we want to take a project and make it a better project. So anyone who tells you that it's strenuous or burdensome or whatever, these things make projects better. I sat through the Walmart hearings back in 2008 that went on for a while, and that project was approved at 135,000 square feet. So I don't want anybody to tell me that a business can't deal with an ordinance like this. This ordinance makes it better for the town of Greenfield, city of Greenfield. I also want to say that another myth is that we are not addressing an individual retailer tonight. We're not talking about this restaurant or that supermarket or whatever. This has nothing to do. I listed in my materials that I sent you traffic impacts of two specifically named retailers, just so that you know who they were. But we don't, I think that as the chairwoman stated at the last meeting in January of the full council. She said very correctly, we need to start making decisions, and I think Councilor Minhas said this as well. We need to make decisions based on what's best for the zoning, for the town, for the city, not for X or Y developer that has come before us. So you will see in my statement, you know the history here. Started off in 1991 with an MDR at 500 car trips a day. Changed 25 years later. Nothing unearthly happened to Greenfield in those 25 years, but the wisdom of the council in 2016, they doubled it to 1,000. And then, as part of a totally unrelated political move, the city council agreed to raise it 3 times to 3,000 to get a library. It had nothing to do with the MDR. It had nothing to do with what's best for Greenfield. So I'm encouraging us to go back to 2000. That's why we filed the citizen petition. And based on my numbers, and I'll be happy to see anybody else's, 3 million cars will pass through that part of the Mohawk Trail when all of these projects are added up together. And last thing I want to say with your forbearance, the reason this was questioned at 3,000 is that the last retailer who came through the door said honestly, and watch the tape, George Philippos can tell you, at the planning board, he was asked, did you look at anything else about your impact other than your impact in over friendlies? And the guy said, no, we didn't look at anything. No level of service, no impacts, nothing. That's the problem with having a site plan review for projects that generate a fair amount of traffic, because it tells you nothing. That's why we need to lower this to get projects like that in the pipeline. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak for the hearing? Okay, I am going to close the public hearing at 6:34. And now we are going to move on to discussing the motions at hand. I have to read these again, I'm sorry. At least this one is. I like looked it up before I came. I was like, do I really have to read these things twice? I do have to read.
Why I call you a chair, you gotta sit down after.
Yeah. Pretty used to reading out loud.
We appreciate it.
Order number FY 24-070, the city council moved that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance article 7, special regulations, chapter 200, zoning section 50, major development review, subsection B, application, paragraph 1, by deleting 3,000 and replacing it with 2,000 as follows. 1, all new uses as defined by the Greenfield zoning ordinance that generate 2,000 vehicle trips per day or more in the general commercial district and or 1,500 vehicle trips per day in any other district, subsection B1, amended by the city council on March 20th, 2019. And further amends the table of contents and index of the code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the code of the city of Greenfield. Okay. I'm going to open this up for discussion. Derek. Councilor Healy, sorry.
Yes, I'm a no, and I'll tell you why. I think those areas that are defined in that zoning district are very well located in the city. I think where they are located, they can support the additional traffic. I also know that the Mass Department of Transportation is doing a large intersection renovation project that's been in the works. That's funded 80% by the federal government and 20% by the state, which is going to increase lane widths at that intersection. It's going to have bicycle lanes. It's going to have improved safety, sidewalks, et cetera, for that area on Route 2 and Coleraine Road. I just really don't think it'd be beneficial. I honestly don't think 3,000 cars is a lot a day. I used to work for the Department of Transportation for 6 years. I've worked on many of these projects. I've seen communities that have dealt with the same situation. So, you know, I just think it sends a bad message to any prospective businesses. We drove out Walmart already. I won't thank anybody for that. But the problem is, I feel like those districts should be encouraged to have businesses come in. We're trying to bring business in, and I think you're really going to hurt that. I just really don't think it's a good idea, and that's my personal opinion. But that's all I have to say.
Can I ask you a question, Counselor Healy?
Sure.
I was told, and I didn't have time to verify this, but that the state uses 2,000 cars for the DOT as the recommended number for a major development review anyways?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I tried Googling, but I couldn't find what I needed fast enough. Any other counselors online? Counselor Minhas?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna vote yes on this because I think this can be controversial and people have strong opinions on both sides of this. But I think, like when this was discussed in the last council meeting too, when this was hinted at, I think we have to think about the long-term impact and what the demographics of the town are going to look like, what the traffic in the town is going to look like. And I mean, I'm saying this genuinely. I don't think this is a way to deter any specific business from coming in. There will still be money to be made once they go through the review, and I think it's a tool that the city has and that the public has in order to just better assess how a business will impact the surrounding area and how it will affect the city. So I don't think this is necessarily this is like an anti-business measure or anything. We can go into this further, but I mean, I personally am involved locally on a business level here, and I don't think this is something that would necessarily deter any business from wanting to come here and operate. So, yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll just say, yeah, I'm happy to vote yes on lowering the threshold to 2,000. I agree that there are a lot of potential long-term impacts of this, particularly of the combination of, multiple big projects that we're talking about here. 2,000 is the state number. And again, we're not talking about like something that will, as Al said, stop the project, right? Like major development review is a review. That we have professional people in our city whose job it is to do it. We also, we might hire in other experts as we need them. But I think that the sum total of the project we're talking about really could have quite a significant impact. And 3,000 is a high number. So I'm very comfortable to lower it to 2.
Yeah, I agree that it's a reasonable thing to lower this to 2,000. And Wahab mentioned, or Councilor Minhas mentioned the phrase tool, and having, the planning board, I think, has precious few tools beyond just following the zoning regulations. So when there's something that is major, it doesn't seem unreasonable to look at it, especially something that is got to measure about vehicles, miles traveled. Part of this is an economic development committee, and a big piece of that, I think, is long-term stewardship of the environment, including carbon emissions. Vehicles are the single biggest thing we can control. Encouraging developments that are car-oriented is something I would like to see less of, not more. And so, this is not, I'm all for Starbucks taking over a Friendly's that's going to be empty anyway. I have no beef with Starbucks. And I agree that we shouldn't be making decisions based on individual projects, but this doesn't strike me as saying no. It's just given us a chance to think about things. And so if, you know, somebody views this as an onerous regulation, I would also say, you know, I imagine there's a business opportunity that doesn't generate this many trips. And, you know, that's, again, I don't want to stop somebody from investing in our community. I'm really thrilled that people want to. And I'm also glad about that Mass DOT project, but that's not a thing that we can rely on in every single instance. We're getting lucky with Main Street. We got a Main Street redesign coming, hopefully with bike lanes and more safety measures, because that's another issue here too, that I'm deeply concerned about is pedestrian safety. You know, so the more cars, the more opportunities for friction between steel and a human body. And so, you know, this area of town and that New England Rotary is just one of the worst traffic designs for human safety. I don't know if you guys have ever walked on that road. I have, and it's terrifying to try to like scamper across the rotary like you're in a Frogger, you know, and somebody might say, well, why don't you just drive? What if you don't have a car? What if you don't want to? You know, that kind of thing. So this is not a difficult yes for me.
Yep. I am also a yes on this. There's a couple different pieces here for me. One is that, people live here, they drive to and from work. Where this is, I do agree with Derek that where this specific project is located I don't have a ton of concern. But like I said at the last meeting, I'm more interested, especially in EDC and in zoning moving forward, looking at what we need for the city and not what we need for specific projects. This is something where like Main Street, we have the redesign coming. We have these new businesses potentially coming in on Mohawk Trail, but we have businesses on Federal Street that at certain times of day, there's lines down the street out of driveways. And so, those are unsafe. Bikes can't pass because they're off to the side in the shoulder where bikes would be. I am in support of this. I think it's in fairness to the city to have a major development review in place. I think the threshold that the state uses is reasonable, at 2,000. I think it's time, that we plan appropriately for this. And I think, the other thing that I keep thinking about the Starbucks is like, is Starbucks specifically going to generate more traffic than Friendly's did in its heyday? Right? I think that's like they're probably comparable. But we do have the Aldi's going in on the other side, and the main way to enter will be off of Route 2. So like I am concerned about congestion right there. And there not being a turning lane that's specific. And so I don't know how the timing's going to lay out for this, but I am in support of the major development review and will be voting yes next week. Do we have anyone else? I noticed that we do have someone from the planning board here. Did you want to make a comment to the committee or?
No, thank you for asking. I just wanted to hear if we couldn't have a joint public hearing. I just wanted to
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you for coming. Derek, go for it.
Yeah, I'd just like to remind people that Main Street is not part of the general commercial district. Federal Street is not part of the general commercial district. These are areas that already are subjected to lower MDR thresholds. So, you have to look at the zoning map to fully understand, it's not just that intersection, but it's further down as you go down Burniston Road towards Burniston. That's an area. You also have an area over off by Deerfield Street or, Route 5 and 10. They're strategically located on roads that are meant for heavy traffic. Downtown is not in the general commercial district. So any project going there is going to be subjected to the lower threshold, but I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Yeah. I appreciate the reminder of the zoning map, but I actually think that you like confirmed for me that I agree with this because like I'm thinking of, I walk with my kids down to get ice cream from Regary's in the summer, and that's where the bus stop is. And that traffic pattern is a nightmare. And have, witnessed kids almost get hit at the bus stop there. So Yeah, thank you though for everyone's input. I do really appreciate it and everyone's expertise on this. If there's no more comments, we will do a roll call vote. Okay, great. So it's frozen. A yes vote would change the MDR threshold to 2,000. Counselor Garrett,
Yes.
Counselor Gordon,
Yes.
Counselor Healy,
No.
Counselor Minas,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. Yeah. We're gonna have an interesting meeting this month. All right, we are going to go to the next motion, order number FY 24-069.1. The city council moved that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200 zoning, section 3, terms and words by adding the following language in bold to the definition of farm poultry. Farm poultry premises used in the production of poultry and or eggs having more than 10 poultry premises on parcels of land less than 5 acres are allowed to have up to 10 poultry, not including roosters. And further amends the table of contents and index of the code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the code of the city of Greenfield. I will open this one to comments. Yeah.
I'm a,
More chicken joke?
yeah, I'm
No.
a cock-a-doodle yes. Oh, that's terrible. I'm sorry. Roosters are terrible. That's really where my comment is.
Yeah, I do have a question about enforcement of this, which I don't know if anybody knows. I didn't read further to find out about this, but who and how is this enforced?
If I may, I
Yeah.
believe that it's enforced by the animal control officer.
Okay,
Whether or not that happens.
yeah, I have
you
a
know, in
rooster
real life,
problem
I
at
don't,
my
I don't know.
house, well, in my neighborhood.
There's a rooster in my neighborhood that I actually kind of love because
my
I used to
God.
live in places where roosters would crow early in the morning and it makes you feel nostalgic, but I can totally understand why that is an issue, especially in, more densely populated parts of the city. And
Yeah, well, I will be voting yes on this.
Yeah, same.
Anyone online have comment about this? Okay,
I love all sorts of animals. Sorry. But I'm gonna have to vote. Yes.
Problem is roosters don't love you, and say they're just mean.
okay, we're gonna do a roll call vote. Counselor Garrett,
Yes.
Counselor Gordon. Yes. Counselor Healy,
Yes.
Counselor Minhas,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. Okay, now we have order number FY 24-69.2. The city council moved that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200, zoning section 3, terms and words by striking the following language in strike through and replacing with the following language in bold to the definition of dwelling 3-family. Dwelling 3-family, a detached building containing 3 dwelling units, striking where each of the 3 units or any portion thereof must be above or below at least one of the other units, and adding also referred to as a triplex, and further amends the table of contents and index of the code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the code of the city of Greenfield. And there was a rationale with this about and the need for increased accessible dwelling units. And this would allow for side-by-side units to be constructed because it's eliminating that, like, they must be one on top of the other. Yeah.
I mean, this is an easy yes for me. I don't know how many sort of the classic triplexes we have in Greenfield. I don't know how many people are really raring to build side by side triplexes, which I'm not even entirely sure what that would look like. But we absolutely need more accessible housing. If this is something that might help us get there, then great.
I'm totally in favor of letting people build as much housing as possible, whatever we need to do. But I had a question. I wasn't sure if maybe you knew Marianne or Derek, they've been on the council already. Or is something like a row house legal in this city? Like you have in like a Baltimore or something where there's just like a block and just houses attached? Or is that not allowed? Because when I was reading this, I'm like, this reminds me of like a row house situation,
Yeah.
Interesting.
but I'm not sure, I wasn't sure if that was something that was allowed to be built in the city.
I think Derek, correct me if you know more, or also if you know more, but there's like certain areas that allow multifamilies and certain that don't. And so like I think now you could potentially, in an area that allows multifamilies, you could apply for a special permit. Is that true? To build something that has multiple units, like happened down on Deerfield Street, where they put like all of those together. That was by special permit.
Or whatever that.
Yeah. But like this type of thing is allowing, I know there's a proposal for something on Hope Street that's either a 2-family or a 3-family.
Down on the south end, right?
Yeah, right next door to me, actually.
Oh, really?
But this would like something like this would allow for, instead of, like starting to build some of the beginning of those like row houses where there's 3. But my understanding is that there's only certain areas of the city where that would be possible based on the zoning. And then if you want to build more than 3, it's special permit.
I don't have it, all the details, at my fingertips.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Well,
Yeah.
just, I'm curious, something I want to look into. I was, in case somebody knew.
Yeah.
And if they
I
were,
will say that if you were to build multiple houses side by side, they're going to have to meet building code, which is going to require, certain safety precautions in those houses, firewalls, etc. So when you get into old construction and the code didn't really have a lot of dictation, that's when people get hurt. So I think you wouldn't have to worry about that situation where you'd have a house fire and it would burn all the units. You'd have plenty of time to evacuate.
Any other comment on this one?
I'm just a little curious. Like, what does this look like? So like if you have a 2-family home, right, and you want to, would this have to be attached to your existing home? Can this be a separate part, like in your backyard? Can this like what does it mean when it's not specifically, oh, it has to be above or below?
So that's what's
Yes.
being striked. That's what's being striked from the language. So what's being striked from it is where each of the 3 units or any portion thereof must be above or below at least one of the other units. So that was making the assumption that any 3 unit in any triplex, we call them triple deckers where I grew up.
Yeah.
It would be one on top of the other. And this is broadening the code so that somebody could build like 3 single-story units side by side, like Counselor Garrett was saying, like row houses. So you have 3 units attached, or potentially 3 units. I think it's attached.
They have to be
Attached
attached.
building, yeah, and they have to be attached. So this isn't addressing ADUs. This is only addressing 3 attached 3 attached units together. And it's striking that requirement. So someone could build 3 up, or they could build 3 side by side. It's just broadening our building code. I'm obviously going to vote for this because anything they think, or not anything, most things we can do to make it accessible for people to build in our city are a good idea.
Okay, that clears things up. Okay, yeah, I support it.
Great. Okay, I'm going to do a roll call vote. Counselor Garrett?
yes.
Counselor Gordon?
Yes.
Counselor Healy?
Yes.
Counselor Minhas?
Yes.
And I am a yes too. Okay. Order number FY 24-069.3. The city council moved that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200, zoning, section 55. Marijuana establishment, subsection B, applicability, paragraph 4, by deleting the following language and strike through no more than 8 marijuana retailers and strike through no more than 4 marijuana delivery operators shall be allowed within the city of Greenfield. The number of licenses for brick and mortar marijuana retailers shall be capped at 8. A marijuana outdoor cultivation is limited to tier 1, 5,000 square feet per license. No person or entity having direct or indirect control shall be granted or hold more than 3 licenses in a particular class. The maximum outdoor canopy permissible under all licenses for a single parcel is 15,000 square feet, and further amends the table of contents and index of the code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that be in compliance with the numbering format for the code of the city of Greenfield. This one also has a rationale with it. So it's saying that in 2022, Charlie Baker signed a bill, an act relative to equity in the cannabis industry that requires host municipalities to establish initial policies to promote equity in the cannabis industry or be subject to penalties. The Massachusetts Cannabis Control Committee encourages cities and towns in Mass to consider incentives for increased participation by social equity applicants in their local cannabis ecosystem. Under the state program, they're eligible for exclusive access to delivery licenses, including marijuana courier and delivery operator licenses for a 3-year period from 2022 to 2025. So this is just striking through the piece around the 4 marijuana delivery operators. So that's the only change to this code. Is there any comment on this one?
Question.
Mm-hmm.
By marijuana delivery operator, this like I'm just wondering in that lane of, from getting the marijuana to selling it and then going to the consumer, or like at what stage is this? Like delivery can be like to the consumer, or delivery to like, what is this, to the consumer? Is this what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's to the consumer.
Yes, it is.
Do we have any of those in Greenfield?
There's a sign or something on right by Stop and Shop. There's a place like opening soon.
Interesting.
Thing.
So yeah, my first question was also, do we have any of these? Which is not a reason not to regulate them, whether we have them or not, obviously, at the moment. I will say I feel generally fine about this, but also the proposed amendment, in my view, doesn't address the rationale.
Yeah.
Like there's a supposed link between those two things that I am not seeing. Like, have we established those equity policies? Or are we paying monetary penalties?
Yeah.
How does this address the equity issue? I mean, I know that it's part of the equity policy that minority owned marijuana retailers are first in line to get those delivery licenses. Great. I don't know how lifting a local cap on the licenses makes that happen, particularly in Greenfield. So I'm just not entirely sure why this is in front of us, or what it does, to be honest. That said, I'm actually personally, this is one time where I'm sort of like, let the market do what the market's going to do. I think it's ridiculous. And particularly in some other communities, how many retailers have popped up. I don't know about delivery operators, but they're not all going to survive. And I think that, if we have 4 at some point, if we have more than 4, if we have a market for more than 4, then more than 4 will survive and people will, get what they want. So I'm fine with lifting it, but I also don't entirely understand how it's supposed to address the equity issue.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of confused. Sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, if you want to give us the rationale.
Yeah.
It's just a math thing, that because these would be specifically for social equity applicants would be favored, we'd had a limit on it just because there was the start of this process. And we said, okay, we'll cap it. We didn't have any. And so now that it's specifically targeted for this group, we thought, why have a cap on it? If you have 5 people applying,
Yes.
why would you want the 5th person to be excluded?
Got it.
So it's not clear how this will play out,
Mhm.
but we just didn't see that it was necessary to retain that cap, given the social equity applicants we're going to get priority.
Great. Thank you.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
And I think probably the way to actually address the act relative to equity in cannabis, in the cannabis industry, which I will read after this, but is not necessarily through. It's probably not through necessarily this avenue, but I appreciate the start of the process.
There might be some other equity.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna do, unless anyone else had something to say, Counselor Minhas?
Yeah, so are people scrambling to fill those four, that limit of 4? Like what? I don't understand.
At the moment, we actually don't know if we have one. But we're,
Interesting.
but we are now, well, a vote yes for this would remove the cap of 4 delivery options to allow for there to be anyone um, to take that role.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I am of this has nothing to do with the amount of marijuana establishments in the city, and so that is a whole separate debate, but kind of in the same vein a little bit, not to be that annoying person, but a lot of people are in the city are complaining about the dramatic increase in the amount of marijuana establishments and where they're located, and how they're kind of taking advantage of some of the outdated legislation and zoning issues. Like I'm on Davis Street, and so many people on Davis Street are just pissed off. And I know the delivery systems have nothing to do with the actual brick and mortar establishment that already exists or will exist in the future. But I just don't understand why we would have to remove a cap if people aren't like dying to fill it.
So,
Counselor Garrett.
yeah, the exclusive access to delivery licenses piece, I mean, that rationale makes sense to me that this is, again, it says an initial policy, and I imagine this isn't going to be the last bill that becomes an act in our legislature to talk about this stuff, because Massachusetts did not do any equity with the cannabis industry. It was like wicked rich people getting licenses, Charlie Baker's buddies. Like it was, rich people basically benefiting from this. And so like I get that this is like a nod towards it, but again, as everyone's been saying, this is not equity really. But it says initial policy, and I'm also curious to know, have we been penalized? Because we are wicked late. It's been like a year almost that this thing has said we're going to be penalized, and I bet you we haven't, because I'm sure this thing doesn't really have teeth because Baker signed it on his way out the door, and so it was probably one of those kind of things. Regardless, I'm going to vote yes on it just because the rationale does make sense to me, at least as far as an initial policy. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think Councilor Gordon said earlier, let the market bear it. I can't imagine we're going to just have like hundreds of people on bicycles delivering cannabis to people. And if we do, that's ridiculous. And at least it's making the city money, hopefully through being a business within it. But I can't imagine that's going to happen. So I also don't know why I think they're going to be on bicycles. They're going to be in vans. I dream.
Yeah, I would love for us to have like a courier scene in Greenfield.
Ching ching.
But I think probably because we potentially haven't had any applicants for access to delivery licenses, we may not be out of compliance, but it sounds like we do need a policy, and this is a start at having that policy. I'm gonna do a roll call vote unless anyone else has anything related to this. Counselor Garrett,
Yes.
Counselor Gordon,
Yeah.
Counselor Healy,
Yes.
Counselor Minhas,
No.
and I am a yes. Okay, we're almost there. FY 24-069.4A, the city council moved that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200, zoning section 34, sign regulations, subsection F, general sign regulations, paragraph 5, by adding the following language in bold. Dynamic display signs, also known as electronic message centers, shall be prohibited with the exception of municipal uses. Dynamic display signs, also known as electronic message centers, means that any sign designed for outdoor use that is capable of displaying an electronic signal, including but not limited to cathode ray tube, CRT, light emitting diode, LED displays, plasma displays, liquid crystal displays, LCD, and other technologies used in commercially available televisions or computer monitors. Signs with this technology, which are placed by a public agency for the purpose of directing or regulating pedestrians or vehicle movements, are exempt from this chapter. And further amends the table of contents in the index of the code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the code of the city of Greenfield. And so this was because I think I remember when we updated this language initially, but we didn't put that piece in there that states that people like the fire department or town, the city or the police could put up a display, an electronic display to convey whatever message they need to convey. Is there comment or this on this one?
I don't want the city to be able to do it. I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander. LED signs, like the one by the high school, they're so bright that when you walk by them, you're blinded. They're distracting to drivers. They're not pleasant to look at. And I know that's a qualitative measure, but if we're going to put restrictions on businesses, I don't see any reason that the city should be putting up big flashing neon lights. And especially like I respect, I think the fire station is beautiful. And I think unfortunately this would be welcome to downtown. It's the first nice thing you see after seeing a car dealership and, again, a bunch of other kind of developments that aren't exactly pleasing to the eye. Here you are, here's a bright LED sign. Like, I don't know if there's anybody who has the experience of seeing one of these things and thinks, I feel calm and relaxed and I want to spend time here. And, again, this is really a qualitative measure and very much a personal preference of mine, but I don't think that this is something that we should be carving out for the city. So I'm going to be a no vote on it. It's also light pollution issues. They, again, are wicked, wicked bright. Like the one on the town common. Again, it's like a beacon. Again, the high school one is atrocious. So yeah, no, I saw this and this is one where I will not be saying yes.
Yeah, I wish that this was a little more clear that it was like, with the exception of municipal uses, like for emergent or urgent situations. Because I actually do agree, like, I hate the one on the comment. I mostly hate it because my kid always wants to play with it and I can like never get where I need to go. But like like I remember when the GCC one went up and it's like shocking sometimes to me, especially if I leave like before sunrise. I wish that this had a little more. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm totally fine with like, we had one up that said the water ban was in effect for a long time last summer or the summer before, and those type of things that are directive for urgent situations. Anyone else?
I'm in a similar place. Kind of with both of you. I don't love the bright signs. But I do think, A, we already have some, so that puts us in a difficult position if actually municipal uses are prohibited. And And I don't want the city to have to go to a lot of expense, well, A, to waste the expense we've already gone to, but also go to expense to take them out. I do respect that there is a need on occasion for like actual emergency signage and things like that I think that this covers. So at least for the purpose of getting it to discussion next week, I will be voting yes on it. And I do hope that if we do pass this next week, that city departments exercise restraint and really keep in mind the light pollution and other factors that are really frustrating for people about some of these signs.
Do you know if the rationale behind this was that it was like for urgent and emergent uses, or was it for like, if we're building a new fire station, we can put whatever sign we want on the fire station? Or was that not
It
discussed?
certainly was, when it was presented, it was talked about having things like, you know, the water restrictions or something like that. But it wasn't indicated that it would be like it would be shut off if there wasn't something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. And is it true? I think I remember from when we changed this initially that like, if someone already has that sign and then we change the code, like they're fine, they get to keep their sign. Yeah.
Okay.
So there wouldn't be any
Okay.
like additional costs or anything like that.
Just for the record, I am totally like emergency signs or something like that is totally reasonable.
Yeah.
It's not, I'm not a zealot against LEDs. It's just the permanent ones. Wahab had his hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Wahab, sorry.
I had some confusion, but then I read it again, and I think that confusion is gone.
Okay. If there's no other comment, we will do a roll call vote on this one. Counselor Garrett,
No.
Counselor Gordon,
Yes.
Counselor Healy,
Yes.
Counselor Minhas.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm gonna be a yes as well for now. I have a process question, but I'll ask Kathy after. FY 24-069.4B. The city council moved that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200, zoning section 34. Sign regulations, subsection 1, exception. It's paragraph 3 by striking the following language in the strike through. Wait, oh no, this is a new one. The no sign other than the traffic control and route signs authorized by public agencies shall be placed within a public right of way unless a special permit has been granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals with prior approval from the Greenfield Licensing Commission and the Greenfield Department of Public Works. We're striking the Greenfield Licensing Commission and leaving the Greenfield Department of Public Works for the city, county rights of way, and the Massachusetts Department of Public Works for state right of way. And further amends the table of contents and index of the code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format and the code for the city of Greenfield. Any comment on this one?
I'll comment that I'm totally in favor of this. The Greenfield Licensing Commission issues licenses, which don't, pardon me, seem to apply to this situation because we're talking about signage, which is not a thing that needs to be licensed. So I'm not sure why the Licensing Commission was involved in the first place, but I totally trust our Department of Public Works to make these decisions. And I don't think the Licensing Commission needs to be involved.
Yeah, one less thing to check off doesn't seem like a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I personally had a friend who went through trying to get clearance to put like one of those like little bolded signs
like a
in front of, sandwich board in front of her business. And it took her like way too long to make it happen. Any other comment before we do a roll call vote for this one? Counselor Garrett.
Yes.
Counselor Gordon.
Yes.
Counselor Healy.
Yes.
Counselor Minhas.
Yes.
I am also a yes. Okay. Order number FY 24-069.5, the city council moved that it be ordered that the city council of Greenfield amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 200, zoning section 21, water supply protection district, subsection A, a purpose, paragraph 1, by deleting language and strike through and adding language in bold. 1, the general boundaries of the water supply protection district include zones 1, 2, 3, and shown on the official map dated, striking through dated July 28th, 2014, and adding and as amended. The water supply protection district includes the Millbrook well field and the recharge and watershed areas as determined by the hydrologic study titled Aquifer Land Acquisition Study, prepared for the City of Greenfield Department of Public Works by Tig and Bond Incorporated of East Hampton, Mass, August 1988. The district also includes the Leary Well Site, Zone 1 and 1/2 mile interim Zone 2, required by the Department of Environmental Protection. The district also includes the Cason Well Site, Zone 1 and Zone 2 recharge areas. The maps, as well as the accompanying report, are incorporated herein by reference and are on file with the city clerk, inspector of buildings, and planning board, and further amend section 200-21 water supply protection district WP of the zoning ordinance by replacing numbers 1, 2, and 3 relative to zones with Roman numerals 1, 2, and 3 throughout the ordinance, and further amends the table of contents and index of the code, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the ordinance be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format for the code for the city of Greenfield. Is there any comment on this one?
That somebody believes in rules.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? All right, roll call vote. Counselor Garrett,
Yes.
Counselor Gordon,
Yes.
Counselor Healy,
Yes.
Counselor Minhas,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. That's a unanimous yes. Okay, and now I believe we have a presentation, a 10-minute presentation by Glenn Ayers. Glenn, did you have slides you wanted to share?
Yes, I do. Can I do that
Okay.
now?
Yes, so you can make Glenn a co-host.
Okay. I will do that.
Stephanie is asking if she can ask a question.
I do. All right, so.
Stephanie, I cannot take questions now, but if you if you email me, I will do my best to answer your question.
You are now a co-host, Glenn.
Great. Let me find the presentation. And
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sorry I didn't do that earlier.
how's that look?
Perfect. Wonderful.
Fine with
Great.
it?
Okay. All right. Well, I really appreciate you inviting me to the meeting tonight. And I am appearing before you as the chair of the Board of Health. I want to make that clear that, I in previous incarnations, I worked very closely with the neighborhood around Lunt, but since I've been appointed as the chair of the Board of Health, my role now before the city, before any other entity, is as the chair, unless I specifically say that I'm speaking as a private citizen. So tonight, I really appreciate you inviting me here. I'll try to be quick. I have a number of slides. Please ask any questions as I go along. I'm showing you the timeline, and a couple of things I want to point out here. The property was in industrial use for over 100 years. And the use of TCE solvents started sometime in the 1930s in general. That's when those materials became widespread use in manufacturing. I don't know specifically. I don't know if anyone knows specifically when they started being used at Lunt, but that's the major contaminant that we're dealing with. And that contamination was suspected a long time ago, probably as early or before 2010, but it was confirmed in 2012. And there was some cleanup done, surficial cleanup done with the DEP and EPA coming in with some teams doing cleanup, some contractors. But that was not a thorough job. And so the redevelopment occurred, the facility opened, and the cleanup had not been completed. As a matter of fact, the site investigation had not been completed. And so as a result of all of that, you probably know the history. The PIP group formed, the Public Involvement Plan group formed in late 2021. And that spurred the DEP to conduct an audit. And that audit found that the city was in non-compliance with the cleanup regulations. So let me just keep moving along here. More recently, our new mayor requested that the Board of Health actually implement the public involvement plan because it hadn't been implemented. And that is actually a state requirement under the DEP regulations. And so the Board of Health met and agreed to take that on, that role as helping to implement the public involvement plan. And then there was a meeting held, a PIP meeting, which essentially was an official city meeting. And that was the first time in 2 years that the city has actually done anything related to the Lunt cleanup effort. So I'm going to quickly go through this timeline that DEP expects sites to follow. When a site is reported, the contamination, it's classified. This site was classified as a tier 1, but that doesn't matter. Then there's a process of collecting site information and coming up with a comprehensive site assessment. That's by year 3. And then there's usually a cleanup plan that is developed soon after that and implemented. And then DEP envisions that depending upon the scope and severity of the contamination, most sites would be cleaned up within 6 years. And so that's the DEP timeline. And this is our timeline. We're in 2024 now. The contamination was found way back in 2010 or 2011 or 2012. And why do we find ourselves in 2024, essentially in year 2 of the DEP process? That's the question we need to be asking ourselves. And really, the bigger question that I want you to keep in mind is, what are we going to do about this? And I'm going to try to answer that. But keep that question in mind. Why has it taken us 12 or 14 years to get to the second year of this process? And what are we going to do about that? So this is it's a map of the site. You can see the Lunt buildings there. The ball fields would be to the left of that at the top where it says current groundwater results. Those are the ball fields. And I'm going to zoom in on some of these most recent results from January and February, looking specifically right around the building complex there, the parking lot area. Those numbers that are in yellow are relatively high numbers. This is the recent. Everything in red is the recent sampling in the last 2 months. And the ones in yellow specifically are multiple contaminants that were chlorinated solvent contaminants in addition to TCE. All the other ones that are in white are TCE, but those yellow ones are other things in addition to trichloroethylene. And I want to draw your specific attention to catch basin results. They sampled the material in the storm drains from the catch basins. And this shows that as of just a month ago or so, there was contamination in the storm drains running off of the property through the storm drain system in the city. And it's about 1.5 miles to the Green River. And if you go back to 2012, that contamination was present in 2012. So we essentially have known for 12 years that the TCE contamination is leaving the site through the storm drain system, and this confirms that it is still doing that. I don't know that the relative numbers mean that much. It just means that it is still there. It's still contaminated groundwater that's leaving the site. I'm going to zoom in down here now at a couple of other catch basins, and you can see along Kenwood that these other catch basins also contain TCE. And now going further west along Kenwood, there's another catch basin that has TCE in it further down by the ball fields. And then there's another one even further down by the ball fields in the road, but in well away from the pink area, which is the so-called groundwater contamination plume. But that is a very preliminary estimate of where the groundwater is contaminated. So what are we going to do about this situation? Right now, we are working on revising the public involvement plan. We were very unhappy with the version of that was produced by the tenant or the developer of the Lunt property. So that is in the process of being revised. And like I said, the Board of Health is going to be facilitating PIP implementation going forward. We're also working on revising what's called the scope of work for this site, and that is the response to the DEP audit. The DEP required that the city produce a revised scope of work, and we want some additions made to that scope of work that was previously presented to DEP by the developer. We think there's some other additions that need to be added to that. The main thing that we're interested in, getting back to the question of what are we going to do about this, is that we need to accelerate this timeline. We've spent 12 or 14 years and have progressed 2 years along the DEP envisioned timeline. So we clearly need to accelerate the cleanup timeline. And I'm not saying we need to cut corners. We need to actually do something instead of stalling. And the reason why we want to do all of this is that we need to prepare for grant funding opportunities. So ways that we can accelerate the cleanup timeline, I'm not going to go through these, but our goal here is to come up with a preliminary phase 3 analysis of treatment alternatives. And that will give us some estimates of the cost, how much it's going to cost to abate the discharge of contamination into the storm drain system, what we need to do to gain control of the contamination spread on site, and what we need to do specifically to protect public health, including or especially the public health of the people that are using those buildings, that facility, because remember, the city owns those buildings. We have some responsibility, or maybe a lot of responsibility, to ensure that this is a safe location for people to get services. And then we need to develop other information for grant purposes, applying for grants, because we need to get, I can't say it in public, but we need to get our stuff together, because the big question, remember, what do we do about it? Well, nothing happens without money, as you know, and who pays for it is the big question. Personally, I do not. I'm a taxpayer in Greenfield. I don't want to pay for this. This contaminated site was essentially dumped on the city by the previous owner, by the bankruptcy court. This contamination was not caused by the residents of Greenfield, especially those in the neighborhood that are possibly being impacted by this site. And so I believe that we need to apply for grant funding. The The neighborhood group has already secured and has almost spent down $20,000 by hiring an independent LSP, a licensed site professional, which the city has not employed since prior to 2012. The city has not had a licensed site professional working at this site. So is there any question of why nothing really has happened since 2012? We have not had anyone in charge, making sure that the things that need to happen are happening. Just recently, the neighborhood group found that they were awarded a second round of funding for FY24, another $20,000. So that licensed site professional will be able to continue to work on behalf of the residents of Greenfield, which is very important. And then potential funding sources could include an upcoming EPA grant funding cycle, which will be in the fall of 2024. There's a thing called a multi-use assessment and cleanup grant. There's typically many millions of dollars available. It's a competitive grant. I'm going to say it's very similar to the grant that we've all been talking about with the recycling for the DPW. This would be a different EPA program, but there would potentially be a lot of money available if we can make the case, strong case, for getting funding to clean this site up, because it is overwhelmingly in the public interest to do so. And that's something that we're going to have to work hard over the next several months to prepare that information to make a very strong submission for grant funding. The preliminary analyses or preliminary treatment alternatives that were looked at were very preliminary in the past. One was done in 2015, another one was done in 2020. And those estimates were over $1 million to get this cleanup process started. That was not the final number. Again, those are very preliminary. So we're anticipating asking for a similar amount of money that the city just got from the EPA for the recycling, well over $1 million. But we don't have the information to make a strong estimate of what that's going to cost right now. But we'll be working on that over the next several months. There are other EPA brownfields grants available, and I can put a copy of this slideshow in the chat or email it to you as a PDF. But everywhere where you see the teal color, those are all live links to those specific references, like the EPA website. And then there's also some other federal programs where funding could be available, and that's the Inflation Reduction Act. There's, literally billions of dollars, or maybe it's more than $1 trillion, I can't remember. And then there's also the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. The Infrastructure Act, a lot of this federal money is going to be coming through the state, and it's going to be available through various programs. And we need to make sure that we're doing an exhaustive job of looking for every potential pot of funding that we can find, because, again, nothing is going to happen at this site without money and without help from our state and federal government allies. And so there's also the possibility of getting what are called earmarks, which you probably know about, but those are specific pieces of legislation that allocate funding for a specific project. Money could be included in the environmental bond bill, which I understand will be done next year. That's an opportunity for our Western Mass legislative delegation to insert a specific bill within the environmental bond bill asking for a chunk of money to get this process started. And then there may be a possibility that some of the billions of dollars in opioid settlement funding could be targeted for this particular facility, because it is an opioid addiction treatment facility. And we can make an argument that we want to ensure that this facility is the safest that it possibly can be for those people that are seeking treatment there, who are already suffering a tremendous burden from their addiction. They do not need to be exposed or there does not even need to be the risk of exposure, potential exposure to people that are already dealing with enough in their lives. Going forward, very briefly, I'll say that we are going to be scheduling monthly meetings. That was a requirement that DEP put as part of the scope of work in response to the audit. That, like I said, has not happened for 2 years, but we plan to have monthly meetings. We intend these to, whenever possible, be joint meetings between the Board of Health and the PIP group. And occasionally, like we are tonight, we want to keep the EDC. We really appreciate that this project or this concern is parked with your committee. We want it to stay there because we want the city council and your committee to be present when we start looking for the grant funding, because that will show that there is uniform support for this funding. It'll show the political pressure or the political endorsement of the city government for this, which, again, we have not had in the past outside of the fantastic support that the city council has provided. But it was a struggle. Believe me, it was a struggle, and you know about it. So our topics going forward are going to deal mostly with preparing for the grant, the focus on getting the funding, but we'll be dealing with different topics each month going forward. And I've probably gone over time, so I will cut to the last slide and see if there are any questions for me while I'm here, or at any time. You're always welcome to reach out to me. I'm committed to staying on top of this and to, really help implement the public involvement plan process in a way that it has not happened over the past 2 years.
Thank you, Glenn. I really appreciate it, and just appreciate the longevity that you've had on this project before your position in the health department, and now continuing in the health department to follow this project through. I would love it if you could share your presentation, and if you send it to Kathy, you can just ask her to share it with all counselors. And that will be a great way for folks to just get a start. And I took a couple notes, highlights that I will share when we do a report back from this committee with the council. And I plan to just, invite you every couple months to give us a quick update on what is happening so that we can make sure that we're in the loop. And would love to talk to you about the opioid settlement funds, although I don't think just as someone who's gone to like a bunch of webinars, and I'm about to go to like a 2-day conference next week, I don't think it's appropriate for remediation to use those funds, especially since I think there's no more detox beds in that facility. But happy to talk to you offline about what I've learned about those funds and the process that we need to start doing, which I hope the health department will be involved in.
Absolutely. And I want to maybe clarify that I am not looking to try to take money away from any of the money that's being allocated to the city. But if there's an opportunity at the state level for money to be targeted for this purpose, that would be worth investigating, because I believe that this is a critical public health facility in Franklin County, in Greenfield, and we need to do everything we can to make sure that it stays open and that it is safe. And so, I'll look for any money that we can possibly find under any rock that I can turn over. But, we have a plan, and we're going to move forward with this. And I really appreciate your interest in it and your support and everyone's help, because we're only going to do this with everyone working together to accomplish this. It's going to be a big job, but we have to do it. So that's the bottom line.
Thank you. Do any counselors have questions?
I had a couple acronym questions. OTO, CSA, TNB. I got a little lost in the alphabet soup, but the bigger point is understood and the work is appreciated. If those happen to be on the top of your head, I have no idea what those mean.
Yeah, I'm sorry. OTO is O'Reilly, Tablet, and Oaken. That was the consulting firm that worked for the developer and had done a lot of the work on site. The preliminary work and then the comprehensive site assessment, and that was the document that was audited and resulted in the city being issued a notice of non-compliance. So, that's what the city council voted no confidence in, that company OTO, and specifically the LSP in charge of this project, who is now retired and no longer is working on this project. But there are a lot of acronyms, and I'm sorry if I included those without any. I did right on the first slide. I did try to explain what PIP was, because some people, it could stand for anything. What's the PIP? So
Yeah. Very much appreciated.
there's another acronym. The ESA is the environmental site assessment, which is kind of the first stage, and then a CSA is a comprehensive site assessment. That was the one that was published in 2020 that resulted in the audit finding of non-compliance for the city. And so we're trying to clean up the mess here on, really on two different levels. There's the contamination mess. And then honestly, this process has been a mess. It has been poorly managed. And, we need to work on cleaning it up from a lot of different angles.
Great. Thank you so much for coming. Counselor Minhas?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you and also ask, is there anything that you want us counselors to do to help support you in this? Because this is something a lot of constituents have been behind. Is there anything that you want us?
Yeah, I will always express my, really deep appreciation for the city council in the past and current. I think we currently have at least 9 members of the city council who signed on to the PIP process. That really shows the political support for this. And I think that the council has always been supportive, and it is, believe me, greatly appreciated by the community. And now that I am on the Board of Health, I really honestly appreciate that the council is interested in this, and I know that you will support whatever we come up with, as long as it's reasonable, and that means not socking the cost of this onto the taxpayers of Greenfield.
Any other comment?
Thank you, Glenn.
Yeah,
That's my only comment.
You're all very welcome. Thank you for the great job that you do for the city.
Thank you. Okay, our next meeting will be April 9th, 2024, 6 p.m. here at City Hall Meeting Room, 2nd floor. It will also be hybrid on Zoom. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
And the meeting is adjourned at 7:46 p.m.
Thank you all for coming.